I wanted to record a video to discuss this Olympus Micro Four Thirds lens that I acquired about a month and a half ago. It is the Olympus M.Zuiko 300mm f4.0 IS Pro. I actually wrote a review and posted a lot of test photos on my blog at ocabj.net, but I wanted to go ahead and just record this video to get some information out on YouTube, just because I figured it would be nice to have that information, at least from my perspective, on this lens. So just the tech specs, obviously it's a 300mm prime, f4.0 maximum aperture, has IS built in, and it's 77mm filter threads, and on the Micro Four Thirds system. So with a 2x crop factor of the Micro Four Thirds sensor, you're talking 600mm effective on a 35mm full frame sensor. So that gives you about an equivalent 600mm focal length range. And the reason why I wanted this lens is, one, I've never owned a lens of that focal length, so I never had that kind of reach in my camera kit before. On Canon, I think the most I've ever used was a 300mm, and that was with a one of those, a kit lens. And my best lens, my 70-200 f2.8L IS Pro or IS2 on the Canon, I mean, that's full frame, it's only 200mm, and with a crop factor it's only about 320 with 1.6. So I've never had a 600mm focal length before, so that's why I wanted to get this. Two is the cost. The cost of this lens, as we speak right now, from any reputable dealer, is $2,500. And to get 600mm effective on a Canon, let's say I went with the equivalent lens on a Canon side, it would be the Canon 600mm f4 IS. That is, if I can recall, about $11.5 thousand, so 11.5K. So that's a lot of money compared to $2,500. This is within reach for a larger majority of people than $11,000, $12,000 lens. So as far as the lens itself, it's a pretty good design. It's all metal, and then you have the hood that's built in. You got this lens hood here. It freely spins when it's in the retracted position, or if it's in the closed position, I guess. And if you extend it, you can lock it down by turning it clockwise. If you're looking this way, away from the lens, it locks into place, so it won't retract. And then if you want to, just counterclockwise, and then you can push it back in. You have your standard controls on the left side of the barrel if you're looking away or towards the subject. And so you have a focus limiter switch, and then your IS on and off switch, and then you have an LN function, or the L function button there if you want to program that for whatever you need to do. It comes with this tripod collar. Basically, it's a free 360-degree spinning, so if you want to sit on your tripod and adjust for portrait or landscape, you can do so. And or if you want to move it up towards the top, if you're going to handhold it like this, you can do that. I prefer to handhold with the lens foot, simply because it gives me, I have shorter arms than most people, and because I'm shorter in stature, and it gives me that platform to bring the camera up to eye level a lot better. So that's why I usually keep the lens foot down even when I'm not using a tripod. And you pretty much can lock into place there. In order to remove the tripod collar, you actually have to take the camera off, and then you can loosen the lock nut, and then you can turn it to a certain segment of the lens barrel, and you can bring it over the stop pin, and you can take it off if you don't want to run the tripod collar. You save a little bit of weight if you don't run the tripod collar, but it's negligible in my opinion, so that's why I just keep it on. You cannot remove the lens hood. This lens hood is stuck on permanently, from what I understand. In the instruction manual, it doesn't indicate any way to take it off, and I think if you were to break it, you'd have to send this thing back, the whole lens, back to Olympus for them to service it. The inside of the lens hood has a flocking material, which is, it's usually what you'll find on most high-end lens hoods, or the OEM lens hoods from other manufacturers like Canon or Nikon. That flecking there usually is designed to just prevent any sort of glare. So if light were to hit the lens hood at an angle, it won't bounce against the inside of the lens hood and cause any sort of refraction or any lens flares on the lens. That's the whole point of the lens hood, is to prevent lens flares. So, and also to protect the front element. But that flecking there is really nice, so it keeps any sort of reflection from the inside of the lens hood to hit the front element. You have a retractable focus ring. So if it's forward, it means it's an autofocus. If it goes back towards the camera, it's going to be in manual focus. As far as this is concerned, the weight, and I posted this on my blog at okfj.net, the weight and the length is almost the same as my Canon 70-200 f2.8L IS2. So you got a 600mm focal length effective lens in what is equivalent to a 70-200 Canon form factor. So you're getting a lot of length in a smaller form factor. So a lot of people will look at these Olympus Pro lenses and say, well, those things are huge for Micro Four Thirds. But you have to understand it's all comparative. So I mean, it is larger than most people are used to, but when you compare it to a DSLR form factor or the DSLR platform, your size is a lot smaller than DSLR. So that's the benefit of this as well. As far as the hand holding with IS, so those that understand the Sync IS built in. So Olympus bodies have in-body image stabilization, or IBIS. And for the most part, they don't put IS on their, Olympus doesn't put IS on their, inside their lenses, but with this, they did. So what you can do is they have this technology called Sync IS. It's only supported on the EM1 Mark II, I believe the EM5 Mark II, and the Pen F. I could be mistaken on the Pen F. But what it does is it combines the optical image stabilization built into the lens with the image stabilization of the body, and it syncs them together to get you, I believe I remember, 6 to 7 stops of image stabilization, which is tremendous, especially when you're talking about a long focal length lens. Everyone knows the 1 divided by focal length shutter speed rule traditionally. So if you have a 200mm focal length effective, you kind of want to have at least 1/200th of a second shutter speed or faster. So theoretically, if you follow that rule with a 600mm or 600mm effective, you're talking 1/600th shutter speed if you can. But if you have all the IS built in working, you can get it down. And I've heard people claim they've shot at 1/15th of a second with this whole setup handheld and got in focus sharp photos. I will say that I personally have not been able to do that. My technique is probably terrible. I've even tried monopods and whatnot, and I can still get out of focus shots. But I will say that is most likely due to the fact that even though it's a f4.0 aperture, you do have a very thin depth of field when you do when you take into account focal length. So 600 millimeters effective, even though it's on a Micro Four Thirds sensor, you don't have much depth of field. You don't have much leeway. So when you lock focus, and if you move forward or aft slightly, you could lose focus pretty easily. So that's kind of also along the lines of probably why I'm not getting in focus handheld shots at slow shutter speeds as well. So that being said, as far as the IS is concerned, I think the lens itself, the image quality is excellent. You'll find a lot of people posting sample images of this lens, and they're great. I posted my own. I think they're incredible as far as the quality is concerned with Micro Four Thirds systems. So you are getting a great lens if you invest the money on this in terms of quality and focal range or focal length. As far as the stuff that I don't like about it, I'll talk about those, since there's the benefits and the positives of this lens are fairly apparent when you actually use one. But here are my concerns about this lens. One, I don't really care for the way the focus ring toggles from manual to auto. This is the common setup for a lot of the Olympus lenses, including my 12-40, which is actually on the camera that I'm using to record video. So usually I don't have a problem with accidentally hitting the manual focus ring or the focus ring toggle on my 12-40, but on this lens it happens more often simply because of the size of the ring. You have this, it's about 1.5 inches wide, I guess. And so it's very easily to toggle that manual focus ring. Sometimes I'll have it onto the side if I have it on my camera strap, and it might hit the side of my body and retract it, and I'll come back to take a shot, and I'll try to lock focus, and it won't focus. It's because that focus ring had toggled to manual. Sometimes I'll actually rest the camera or the lens on a pillow of some sort, like a soft rest. And when I do that, if I'm like doing a field expedient rest, sometimes if I try to move around, the weight of the lens on that focus ring will cause it to move fore and aft, and it'll change focus from manual to auto or vice versa. So that's the one thing I don't like about it. I wish they had put a lockout mechanism for the focus ring. If there were some mechanism such that you could lock it in either position, that would be great. And I don't know why they didn't engineer that. If anything, I might just start taping it, because I don't really use manual focus. I'll just put gaffer's tape to tape it so it doesn't move. As you can see here, I've already got some gaffer's tape on here just to kind of protect the lens a little bit, because I've already kind of got some rub marks on the hood and on the body because of when I'm using the camera, I'll hit objects or whatnot, or hit my rest, or hit the metal on the side of my body if I have it on my camera strap. So that's why I put the gaffer's tape there. Another thing too is that I wish they had changed is obviously I wish there was a lockout mechanism for the IS on-off toggle. I have this problem on my 70-200 as well, and that's why I actually put tape over the switch on my 70-200 lens. A lot of times I'll accidentally hit that IS to off, and I'll take some shots, and I'll realize later that the IS was in the off position. Usually you can tell with the 600mm because you're trying to get your composition, and it's shaking quite a bit, so you'll know that the IS is off. So that's kind of an obvious, oh well, you can just flip the switch back on. But I wish they had put a lockout mechanism there as well. And I'm not sure if I'm going to start taping over this. I might just tape it, and then if I need to go to manual, or turn off IS for some reason, I can just remove the tape really quickly, flip it off, and then put the tape back on. Other than that, those are like kind of my two complaints about the lens, and they're very minor. There's one thing I wanted to bring up though, is the fact that the tripod collar does have Arca Swiss dovetails built in. So when I ordered the lens, I was pondering, I was looking online, so which Arca Swiss plate should I get for this, because I wasn't sure if Really Right Stuff made one. I was trying to look at photos online of the tripod foot, and I couldn't find any detailed photos by anyone, including Olympus, of what it looked like. So I didn't know how the flats were, if I could get something with anti-rotation, or if I can get a generic Arca Swiss style plate to put on here with an anti-rotation lip. And so I said, I'll just wait till it comes in. And so when I got the lens and I unboxed it, I was like, oh wow, that's really cool. They put Arca Swiss dovetails already on the foot, so you don't need a quick release plate if you're using Arca Swiss compatible clamps. And so just an example here, I have this Really Right Stuff Arca Swiss screw knob clamp that I use with my camera strap. All I do is just go ahead and loosen it up, put it on there, and as you can see, it immediately bounds to the dovetail, and you're good to go. So that's how I run my camera strap setup. And if you want more information on how I run my camera strap, I have an article on my blog, and I'll link it into the video description just for you to read and see some photos of my camera strap setup. So that's pretty much it as far as lens is concerned. One other thing too is, after I ran the lens for about a month, I really got the inkling to try the teleconverter, so I went ahead and bought one. For those that don't know, there is this thing called the Olympus M.Zuiko digital 1.4x teleconverter MC-14. The 14 means 1.4x, and that basically means you get 1.4x magnification factor with this lens. So that essentially means that 1.4 times 300, if I do my math correctly, that's 420 millimeters, which gets you an 840 millimeter effective focal length, comparatively speaking to a 35 millimeter full frame sensor. So now I have 840 millimeters focal length with this combination. You do lose one stop of maximum aperture, so now this f4 becomes an f5.6. That's just normal with teleconverters, and if you have a 2x, which does not exist for the Olympus from as far as I know, you lose 2 stops, and that's what it is on the Canon and Nikon side. But I tried this as well, and I have a review on this teleconverter on my blog at ocapj.net. As far as the clarity is concerned, it's very negligible if it does exist. There is really no degradation of image clarity or softness. I didn't see it apparent. If you pixel peep it, you can argue that there might be some softness, but I would say that is simply the resolution of the sensor at that point. You're just pretty much pushing the resolution quality of that sensor and the what it can resolve as far as of the light pixels and whatnot. So I don't think there's any issues with softness, in my opinion, and a lot of people will argue either point of that, if you lose or you get degradation on image quality with the teleconverter, but I say it's not really a factor. If anything, with the teleconverter, all you need to be concerned about is the fact that you lose a stop of light. So you're going to start having to push that ISO. You're going to push ISOs up a little bit if you need to get that extra shutter speed, depending on what the light conditions are. So that's pretty much it. If you want more details and some sample photos, definitely check out my blog at ocapj.net. I'll link to the review that I wrote for the lens and the teleconverter in the video description, so you can read up and see some sample photos. So if you're considering getting the 600mm or the 300mm f4 IS Pro, I think it's a buy. I honestly do. Even if it's $2,500, a lot of people who are on the Micro Four Thirds system kind of bought the Micro Four Thirds system as a budgetary system. But I think when it comes down to it, what you're getting out of this lens, as far as quality of the build, quality of the images, and what you're getting compared to other camera platforms, this is hard to pass up at $2,500. I mean, it is a lot, but for a lot of people, but again, where else are you going to get a 600mm effective lens f4 with IS with such high image quality for that cost? Anyway, hope this was helpful for you. Again, go to my blog at ocapj.net. Links in the description of this video. Thanks for watching.